Hey there, Squirrel Army. So, today I'm discussing what are enablers and what are enhancers and how many of each you should roughly run in your decks. But just before we get any further into the video, if you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing and turning on the notifications. It keeps the squirrels from eating your nuts. But with that, let's get back into the content. So first off, I wanted to start discussing what each of these things are, why you sort of need them in your decks, at least to some extent or some degree, because I think some people have them in their decks as well, and they don't really think about kind of what they're doing in the deck or what role some of these cards are playing in their decks. So I want to discuss what those cards are in the deck for, why they're there, etc. So obviously a lot of these cards, or any card that's in your deck, is there to help you do what your deck is doing for the most part and get you to the point of, taking through the game and winning. Taking out your opponents, drawing cards, making your land drops, etc. All of that stuff that you would regularly want to do through the gameplay and whatnot of a generic game. So first off, what is an enhancer? What is an enabler? What's the difference? So what an enabler is the thing that enables the strategy of your deck. Now, we're going to take an example. Let's say, I think we used this example before when I was doing the deck tech guide before, but we're going to use it again because it's pretty simple, basic one to follow through with and to figure out and to see what this sort of term kind of means is a +1/+1 counters deck, because it's a pretty simple one again. So an enabler is the things that put +1/+1 counters on to things that you want to put +1/+1 counters on, or things that sort of, can deal out those counters. So your commander can always be part of this, because you're almost always building around your commander to be like, hey, that's kind of what my commander does for the most part. So your commander is usually an enabler of a strategy or an enhancer of a strategy. So your commander also falls into this category, though you do need other cards that are in your deck that do work with that sort of thing. And there's another subgroup of cards that's payoffs. So cards that sort of like getting +1/+1 counters or whatever it is. Again, if you're a Spellslinger deck, okay, or whatnot. Cards that like you for casting lots and lots and lots of instants or sorceries or whatever. And then you have your enablers of cards that let you cast lots and lots of instants and sorceries, or lots and lots of instants and sorceries to actually cast, i.e. enabling your strategy. So it's not exactly clear sometimes if a certain spell is an enabler. It is an enabler when you have certain cards that react to some of these other cards. So these spells enable these cards to kind of do something, or it enables itself to do something when you are playing those instant sorceries or whatever it is. So that can be a little bit muddy there. But anyway, these are cards that do the thing that your deck is trying to do, essentially, so that you can, again, make those plays, draw those cards, get those effects, do the things that you want to be doing in the game to advance forward in whatever stage of the game that you're at, and, get to the next stage, get to the next step, and, get along with things like that. So that's what they are and what they do. And it's important to have a fair few of these cards sort of in your deck. Now, when you talk about instant sorceries, it's a bit different, but again, you want at least 10 of enablers in your deck so that your strategy will be fairly consistently enabled by the cards that are in your deck. So again, going back to the +1/+1 counters deck analogy that we were doing, you want 10 of these cards that say whenever something happens, you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature or on all of your creatures, or if you pay 6 mana or 4 mana or whatever it is, put a +1/+1 counter on your creatures. Felidar Retreat's like a very good version of this. Gives your team a +1/+1 counter and also vigilance until end of turn. So that is an enabler. That's a very that's a very simple, way of looking at it. A card like that is an enabler. It puts counters on your stuff. You've got to have stuff to put those counters on, but it's also another enabler in a sense because it also gives you bodies to put counters on sometimes, so that can be really useful. Cathar's Crusade's another one that's another great enabler. Again, you've got to have those bodies to put counters on, but again, it's such a good enabler that it goes in any deck because again, you play any creature, you get a +1 counter on everything. Shalai is another great one. I'm not going to go through every single one, but like those are the sorts of things that you're kind of looking at. Now let's move to enhancers. Enhancers are cards that benefit your strategy and make it better and make that strategy, win, or win more, or approach winning, or threaten you to sort of win, or can just make whatever you're doing better in some ways. These can also be sort of a little bit muddy as well. Anything can be a little bit muddy because you can sort of like, well, is this or is this that, or where does this sort of fall? Because some cards kind of fall into both, and that's really great if you have something that's like both. And sometimes some things do both because, well, you happen to have another source, like again, Cathar's Crusade, and when you play something like, again, we'll go back to the +1 counters theme because I'm sticking to that because it's pretty easy. If you have Abzan Falconer, that's an enhancer. It enhances that strategy and changes the state of the gameplay from, okay, I just had all of this big buff stuff. Now all this big buff stuff that I have had with all of my counters on it actually has flying. Now I can actually punch people fairly easily with all of my big buffed stuff. So, and especially again when I have Cathar's Crusade or something like that, suddenly it's also an enabler because, hey, it triggers to put +1/+1 counters on everything as well. So even if I don't have counters on a lot of things, or I don't have quite as many counters on everything that I want, hey, I get one counter extra. So that can, work synergistically with another card that I'm playing in my deck anyway. So that's that's another thing about a lot of these cards is they will work very well together. And that's how you get your synergies going, and that's how your deck sort of goes crazy at a certain point and sort of goes off in a sense, is that, well, suddenly you have a whole bunch of cards that are really liking to work together well, and then you just sort of have that moment of going, aha, now I can do this, and this, and have a very explosive turn. That is why synergy is so important. But synergy is born out of, things that enhance one strategy or enable one strategy, and everything kind of working together to one single point, one single direction for the most part. So I'll try to go to the spell slinger, I guess, analogy. I guess in this case, enhancers would be things that copy my spells, um, make me cast my more of my spells, or make my spells target more of my opponents, or target me more, things like that, or do damage to my opponents and things like that, so that you can get more spells, get a bigger storm count, or whatever, or just get more value out of kind of what you're doing. Um, like Swarm Intelligence or Thousand Year Storm, cards like that that copy your spells and things like that, or Gutter Snipe, I guess, to deal damage to your opponents and whatnot. There are other ones, and there's certainly depend. It also does depend on what kind of outlet of thing you're going for, whether you're going for tokens or whether you're just going for burn damage, or whether you're again going for just mass copying spells and whatnot, because that's a thing as well. So there's a few different ways to do it, but again, you kind of need something to pay off those things at the end to kind of you know, get that win. And if you have those cards that, care about storm counts, the copies don't really count for storm, and things like that. But again, there's certain things that do sort of care about, well, you've still gotten the value out of those spells anyway, I guess. So, but again, like, yeah, you do have to be a bit careful with, like, certain cards being like, well, it's a bit difficult with like spell decks. Like that's what I mean. It's just like you need to know what works and what doesn't work, which is not a thing I would 100% suggest to a new player for the most part. But hey, you know what? Um, you know, if you're a more established player, it's another subject. But again, you need to kind of know, okay, this does this actually work? How does I actually close out the game? Am I milling myself, Thassa's Oracle, whatever, things like this? Am I winning with Labman? What's my actual like win condition? Why am I doing all of this stuff? Where's this actually leading? That kind of like, because those like a +1/+1 counters deck is like straightforward, very clear what the you know path to victory is. I'm going to turn my stuff sideways in combat and hit you with my said stuff. Whereas, like some of these other strategies, like Aristocrats, it's very clear what that deck's actually doing. But a Spellslinger deck could be doing several things, like again. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot harder to also find a lot of synergies with certain things, as sort of say with some strategies. But that's the thing that you kind of need to do. You need to hone in on what are you actually doing. Am I copying all of these spells? Am I, making, 4 copies of whatever that I can't remember his. I think he's Simic, the Simic guy. If you have 4 copies of him on the battlefield, you win the game, or whatnot. So am I doing clones, or whatever? Am I making a mass army of drakes, or am I just doing burn damage to everyone, or how do I actually get to the end of the game for me? Like that's what you need to focus on at the end of it. But these are the things that actually get you there, the enhancers and the enablers. The synergy comes from a lot of stuff that, as I said, works together, and eventually you get to that point of, okay, now I just probably win, or now I'm going to have such a huge turn that if I don't win, I'm so close to winning that it probably means I do win next turn, and it's probably going to be fairly difficult for anyone else to win unless they actually take me out, and that's also going to be fairly difficult. So that's the kind of state that you kind of want to get to. You kind of want to get to the point of not just, and I might talk about this a little bit in another video as well, is overextending what you're doing. But especially when you're a spell deck, I guess, you're not actually investing too much stuff on the board, especially if you're in a burn style build of the deck. But, when you're in that tokens based build of those decks, it's a little bit different. You do have some things on the board for the most part, getting you value every single turn by being able to punch people over and over again and whatnot. So, yeah, but again, it's just one of those things about deck building that you've got to decide, what side of the, synergy fence you're kind of on, or what you kind of want to do. But anyway, guys, that has been me discussing the differences and, what you kind of need. And I do think you need, a few of these in your deck. You don't need as many enhancers as what you need enablers. You need way more enablers than you need enhancers, but you certainly need enhancers as well. You need those enhancers to, basically be the big thing that if you can use this for a few turns, it will change the game so much that now you're just going to win very quickly and very easily. So, yeah. And I think I said in the video for deck building template thing that we did a little while ago that you want probably 10 enablers and 5 or so in enhancers. So I think that's still about right. But again, it is deck dependent and whatnot, and strategy dependent and color dependent sometimes on what you can actually do. And some strategies, again, are more enabled or enhanced in certain ways to one side or the other. And obviously, again, certain strategies, again, are much more effective or efficient than some other strategies to some degree and whatnot. But again, hey, everyone wants to play their own way, and again, not everyone wants to play the same way. So, hey, it is what it is, and it's all cool. Everyone wants to have the fun that they want to have, and yeah. So, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this one. You can let me know what you guys think. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below. But if I don't see you down there in those comments, I'll certainly see you in the next one.